The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden hues over the vast Indian jungle. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers as Rohan Mehta, a conservationist and wildlife photographer, made his way through the dense foliage. His camera slung over his shoulder, he was here to document a herd of elephants rumored to be migrating through the region. The jungle was alive with sounds, the distant cry of birds, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the occasional chattering of monkeys swinging through the trees. But then, amidst the familiar cacophony, came a sound that didn't belong. A low, mournful trumpeting. Rohan's ears perked up. He had studied elephants long enough to recognize distress in their calls. Moving carefully through the underbrush, he followed the sound until he reached a small clearing. There, near a shallow pit filled with muddy water, lay a young elephant calf. It had fallen into the hole, its small frame trembling as it struggled to climb out. Its legs, caked with mud, slid back with every attempt, and its tiny trunk reached out helplessly. Rohan's heart clenched. The calf was alone, perhaps separated from its herd. If it remained trapped, predators would find it by nightfall. He couldn't let that happen. Slowly he approached, speaking in soft tones. "Hey, little one, I'm here to help." The calf's large, dark eyes were filled with fear, but it didn't move away. Rohan unfastened his rope from his backpack and looped it around a sturdy tree. He then tied a secure knot around the calf's front leg, careful not to startle it. With all his strength, he began pulling, using the tree as leverage. For minutes that felt like hours, the struggle continued. The calf trumpeted weakly, thrashing against the mud. Rohan dug his heels into the ground, straining against the weight. Just when exhaustion threatened to overtake him, the calf gave one final push, and suddenly, it was free. The little elephant stumbled forward, collapsing onto solid ground. It panted heavily, its body trembling from exhaustion. Rohan knelt beside it, offering his water bottle. The calf hesitated, then touched its trunk to his arm in what felt like a silent thank you. But before Rohan could celebrate, a deep rumble vibrated through the air. The ground beneath him trembled as a massive elephant emerged from the trees, a fully grown female, her tusks glistening in the sunlight. Her ears flared as she spotted the calf, her protective instincts ignited. Rohan stood frozen. If she thought he was a threat, he wouldn't stand a chance. But instead of charging, the elephant stopped. She studied him, her keen eyes flicking between him and the calf. Then, slowly, she lifted her trunk and let out a soft, rumbling sound, a mother's call. The calf perked up, releasing a joyful trumpet before hurrying to her side. The mother caressed her baby's head with her trunk before turning to Rohan once more. There was an understanding in her gaze, an unspoken acknowledgement of what he had done. Then, with one last look, she led the calf away, disappearing into the jungle's depths. Rohan exhaled deeply. The encounter left an imprint on his soul. He didn't know if he'd ever see them again, but something inside him whispered that this was not the end. Years passed. Rohan had moved to a bustling city, far from the dense jungles that had once been his second home. His work had taken him to conservation conferences and wildlife photography exhibitions. The memory of the calf and its mother never faded, but it remained just that, a memory. One day, an urgent call from his former colleague, Arjun, brought him back to the jungle. Illegal poaching had increased, and elephants were in grave danger. A particularly notorious gang had been spotted setting traps and using tranquilizers to capture elephants for their tusks. Rohan didn't hesitate. He packed his bags and left immediately. When he arrived, the jungle was both familiar and different. The trees whispered the same ancient secrets, but there was a new sense of fear in the air. The rangers informed him that a herd had been driven into a dangerous zone near the cliffs, their usual paths blocked by traps. That night, Rohan ventured into the jungle alone, determined to find them. Armed with his camera and a flashlight, he followed the broken branches and deep footprints that marked their trail. Then a sharp, rustling sound came from the nearby thicket. Rohan turned swiftly, his heartbeat quickening. A figure emerged, a massive elephant, its towering frame silhouetted against the moonlight. His breath caught in his throat. It was her, the mother elephant he had helped all those years ago. Her golden eyes locked onto his, and in that instant, recognition passed between them. She raised her trunk and let out a soft, almost urgent sound. She was calling him. Without thinking, Rohan followed as she led him through the dense undergrowth. She moved with purpose, her massive feet barely making a sound. It was as if she knew exactly where she needed him to be. Minutes later, they arrived at a grim sight. Several elephants, young and old, were trapped near the edge of a ravine. A few had ropes around their legs, struggling desperately against their bindings. Others were too weak to move, having likely been drugged, and standing over them, armed with rifles and machetes, were the poachers. Rohan's blood ran cold. The mother elephant let out a deafening trumpet, shaking the ground beneath them. It was a call to arms. From the shadows, more elephants emerged, their tusks gleaming under the moonlight. They surrounded the poachers, cutting off every escape route. The men panicked. They tried to flee, but the elephants were faster. A massive bull swiped at one of their guns, sending it flying. Another knocked a man off his feet with a swift kick. The leader of the gang turned to run, but found himself face to face with the mother elephant. She lowered her head, eyes burning with fury. Then, with a force that echoed through the jungle, she reared back and slammed her trunk against the ground. The impact sent the last of the poachers sprawling. Within minutes, the rangers arrived, having heard the commotion. The poachers were swiftly captured, their illegal weapons confiscated. The elephants, finally free, trumpeted in triumph. Rohan turned to the mother elephant, his eyes filled with gratitude. She had remembered. She had repaid his kindness in a way he never could have imagined. As the first rays of dawn bathed the jungle in golden light, she extended her trunk toward him. Gently, reverently, Rohan touched it with his hand. A silent promise, sealed by the bond between man and beast. And then, just as before, she turned and led her herd away, disappearing into the vastness of the wild. But this time Rohan knew. This was not the end.